carrots to eggplants to romaine lettuce. This is Paul Pachter, CEO of Long Island Cares.
1, 2, 3, go.
Hi, this is Paul Pachter, CEO of Long Island Cares and the Harry Chapin Regional Food Bank. Welcome back to another episode of Breaking Bread, our program on YouTube in which we go behind the scenes of the Regional Food Bank, but also bring to you issues of importance in our world at Long Island Cares, but also on Long Island itself. And today we're continuing our conversation with Mrs. Sandy Chapin. Our last episode with Sandy Chapin, we spoke about the history of Long Island Cares and what the late Harry Chapin was up to 40 years ago when he founded two organizations, World Hunger Year, now known as Why Hunger, and of course Long Island Cares, which is celebrating its 40th anniversary. Sandy, welcome back. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Paul.
One of the things I remembered about many of our conversations was this issue of self-reliance and self-sufficiency as one of the pillars of Long Island Cares. For you and Harry founding the organization 40 years ago, it was one thing to provide food to people. It was another thing to address those root causes of hunger and poverty in our community that we could probably help people get out of that cycle and become more self-reliant. How did that all come to be? Because 40 years ago, that really was cutting edge. A food bank didn't look at self-sufficiency, self-reliance programs. They delivered food.
You know, I think a lot of times I forget that Frances Moore LePay, who is still out there and doing very important work, was a mentor to Harry. He met her in New York. That she had just put out the book Diet for a Small Planet, and it was a whole new look at famine and hunger and problems around the world. And Harry learned a lot because she was beginning to work on the causes of hunger, and rather than treating hunger with charity, you had to dig into the root causes in communities around the world. So Harry was already very conscious of, he didn't want to just be handing out food, he wanted to be changing lives, and also helping neighborhoods structure their communities to help people. So in the very beginning of Long Island Cares, our board actually was made up not of professionals who raise money for the organization, but people representing some of these community organizations. And I wish I could remember all the names and all the people, but you know, someone who had a large community garden. There were some poverty programs in Nassau County that were represented, and probably some representative of the farm community. And so in the beginning, it was more learning about the community and about what the problems there in order to find out ways to address them. And then pretty early on, a man named Steve Kester joined us. He had served in Burkina Faso in the Peace Corps.
Okay.
And had the training from the Peace Corps where you go into a community, meet people, talk to them about their lives, and then get to know their needs and get to know their desires. And he brought that to Long Island Cares. So he went out, had meetings in churches in different places in Nassau and Suffolk counties. And something I wish, again, that we had more material about is he started two programs in Suffolk County. One, I believe, was called Lake Ronkonkoma Senior Services. It was a kind of, they realized that many people were homebound and separated from food distribution and started a kind of Meals on Wheels program, I think. And there was another program. But then I remember suggesting to him, he was looking at some communities in Nassau County, and I remember suggesting, how about women doing food service? Because, you know, they know how to cook, they're interested in food and so forth. And so he went and met with some different church groups and so forth in Nassau County, and he came back and said, they don't want to be told what they should do. They might, he said, some of them said they'd rather drive a truck than do catering. So anyway, that program turned into New Paths for Achievement.
One of our signature programs.
Which we still have today.
Yes, we do.
And the idea was to bring women who were coming from problem situations of different kinds, bring them together, to try to help to move them out of their problems of abuse and poverty, get them training and build some skills and some experience, and to look for jobs and to just move their lives forward. And we still have those programs.
We still do,
today.
And I can assure you that none of the people that we've placed, at least in the last nearly 13 years that I've been with Long Island Cares, are in the food service industry. Some of them might be driving trucks, but for us, I think the most rewarding thing for us, knowing that we've been doing New Paths for 40 years, is the number of women that we've been able to hire at Long Island Cares.
From the program.
That came out of that program. That. So here you are coming to Long Island Cares for assistance, and when we take you through New Paths and you graduate, Long Island Cares becomes your career, and that's very gratifying. You know, everyone is aware when we speak about the issue of hunger that Harry Chapin's name comes right to the forefront, and we all know of your involvement over the past 4 decades with the organization, not just Long Island Cares, but with Why Hunger. But you also have 5 children, and they also have committed a part of their lives to follow the legacy that you and Harry put together 40 years ago. That has to make you feel good, right? That has to make you feel good.
Yes, and they all felt that they should try to carry on in some way. It's a great feeling for me to have a farmer in the family, because I think I've always had a sort of, secret idea that I should have married a farmer or been a farmer or lived on a farm or something. And I've always played at it a little. But anyway, Jonathan has a wonderful farm in Bristol, Vermont. It's the Hewitt farm. It was in one family for 3 generations, and they've finally tired, and so he's keeping it in farming. And it's on a river. It has 2 streams. It has a trout house for raising trout, and old barns, the kind of old barns that they tear down for the beams, and an old farmhouse. He's especially interested in organic vegetables. And he's already put up solar panels, and he's getting wind. He's very, very crazed over all of the climate change and so forth. And he has bees, and then he's right now doing a lot of getting the farm stand up and the greenhouse and tractors and all that kind of stuff. But you're
going up to Vermont.
So I now have my fantasy farm. I was just up there last week.
And it will grow the rainbow, right?
And then he said, when I'm too old to live alone, that I can come up and live on his farm. Wow.
I could picture that. I never picture you getting old, but I certainly can picture you living on the farm.
And then Jamie the first, the eldest, has been on the Y board. She was on the Y board for years and on Long Island Cares.
Yep, she was on our board for a while.
And Jason, who was the third, he has dedicated his career, we'll say, to workplace development.
Right. We've had many conversations together about workforce development and voc rehab. Yeah.
At one point, he was working with John F. Kennedy Jr., who was concerned with, because I think of some of the father's siblings in the family, that health aides he wanted to create career ladders for people in health services, health aides, because they just get stuck in the same level, and he thought that there could, but also have a lot to offer to management and other areas. So anyway, he's worked in different organizations, always in this kind of finding, working with community colleges to develop training, and then working to get people into all kinds of skills and employment. And let's see, Jen is secretary of the board of Y, and works with Y, and
still performing, still recording.
Yeah, she's also a musician, and she's also a full-time high school history teacher
and a mom
in Brooklyn.
She's busy,
right? And Josh, the youngest, actually does work on a lot of Harry Chapin projects, like the photo book, and he's worked with all the projects that are going on now. There's a musical in development. There's a documentary,
and the new book that just came
and
out.
There's a book that just came out called The Music Behind the Man, and there's a book coming out shortly by Pat Fenton, was a Long Island journalist, or New York journalist.
He's been researching about Harry for years now, because I remember meeting him a couple of years ago.
His book, actually, I don't know the final title, but traces the people and the places and the stories behind the songs.
Yep.
The real people. He actually has gone to meet them, and
told me he went to meet Mr. Tanner, and he went up to Watertown, New York, to write part of the book. Let me ask you a question. We have about 2 minutes remaining. If Harry were still with us, what would he think about the evolution of Long Island Cares? From what he started to where it is now?
Oh, it's hard to know where to begin, but I think self-reliance was always so important to him, and the fact that we are reaching out in so many areas, and it's also affecting individual lives. That's more important than anything. I think that it's great that we can fill the food pantries and get into some isolated neighborhoods and so forth, but to actually be affecting veterans and needy children and
the other folks,
at-risk high school kids, and lots of opportunities for volunteers and for young volunteers, so that they can learn more about their community.
Very important part of our work. I mean, the volunteer force that we work with, throughout all the work we do, it's so comforting to all of us at Long Island Cares to know that you're there. Not only are you our resident historian, but your involvement and the visits that you make and the visits that your children make and the relationship that we have with Why Hunger, it's just so gratifying. I'm so grateful that you were here with us again.
I think Harry would really like to see the Huntington Station right in his backyard.
Satellite, that would be great.
Huntington Station site.
Excellent. Well, we ran out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Paul Pachter, the CEO at Long Island Cares. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit us again right here on Breaking Bread. We'll see you next time.